You are tuning in to the You Are Loved podcast, where we hope to bring love and kindness to the world.
Welcome to another You Are Loved podcast. We are super excited to have Jim Smith on the podcast with us today. He is the executive happiness coach, a global executive coach, author, international speaker, and troublemaker, which I love because I consider myself a troublemaker as well. His passion is to create a happier world and workplace, one leader at a time. Jim has coached leaders from 42 countries and 6 continents to better balance their lives, upgrade their confidence and executive presence, and build more positive workplace cultures. Jim holds multiple certifications in coaching, team coaching, and health and wellness coaching. Finally, Jim wants you to know this, that he lives in a multi-generational compound filled with love and good food. He dances a little every day, and he worships dark beer, dark coffee, dark chocolate, and deeply believes that happiness is a decision, not an event. Welcome, Jim. Thanks so much for hopping on with me today.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, Jacqueline.
So this is great. I'm super excited. I know it kind of got postponed a couple times. And so sometimes during the holiday season, like a lot of us, and for the first quarter, like I get overwhelmed myself, and then I just shut down. So I'm just like, okay, this is all too much now. And so that's exciting. And that's probably one question I'll ask for you, because like so I'll just jump right into it. So a lot of times we're people that are very high level, like achievers, type A personalities, people that have come from toxic backgrounds or per se, or tumultuous type of like backgrounds, and they like just want to succeed. And then you finally start to get all the success. And then you're like, hold on a second. So since you deal with like a lot of executives, how do you help them manage through that type of processes to where they don't fully shut down and kind of balance themselves out?
Well, the probably one of the most common kind of master assessments, inner narratives that people carry has something to do with the situation you described, where, you know, at some point, they develop this story in their head that they're not good enough, or they're not worthy, or I have to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
You know, like you grow up in a family where, you know, you learn to survive, that you have to make mom happy, and mom's never happy. And of course, you know, I'm not a therapist. I'm not going to get into all that.
Course.
But what happens is people learn when they're kids what they need to do to survive. And stories that say, I'm not good enough, or I have to be perfect, what those do to help you survive is they keep you focused. They keep you moving forward. They keep you making sure you're hitting all the details. And so you survive your childhood. And then that narrative just becomes part of your operating system, and you don't even know it's there. So that shows up in coaching a lot, where people are just getting strung out, and they're tired all the time, and they're working all the time, and they start working with somebody like me, and I can see this at play. It's like, why are you working so much? Or what's going on that you believe you have to be in every meeting, or you have to always be making the decisions? We eventually dig up something like that, and then it gives us the opportunity to say, so is that still true? Like, do you have to be perfect? Right? Are you really not good enough? Or what would happen if you were good enough? Totally changes how people can look at themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I was having a conversation with my friend last night, and, you know, we were talking about church and different things like that. And she's goes to like this kind of like a Unitarian style, like where everybody from all different religions and just everything. And like how when she would go to like Christian churches and stuff like that. Like she just felt very rejected and unworthy, which is awful. And I felt, and as a Christian myself, I felt like that even just going to church. Cause like you listen to these stories and you're like, these people, they're like, they follow the Lord their whole life. They grow up in a very conservative home and then they get married at a young age. And by appearances, they have like these great marriages and they did all the right things. And I'm like, well, Lord, that ain't me. It's like, I didn't do all that. But and you just have to be okay with that and know that we're all different. You know what I mean? And we all come to our path of happiness in different ways, you know? So
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
so now you call yourself the executive happiness coach. Like what inspired that title? And like, how do you define happiness in the context of like leadership?
Well, two different questions there. So I'm going to take them one at a time.
Okay.
So what inspired the title?
Yeah.
First is well, when I was a kid, I suffered from depression and kind of got through my teen years alive and survived that. And somebody introduced me to some research that was being done by this young psychologist who's now a very old psychologist, but a guy named Martin Seligman who was beginning to shift his research from looking at dysfunction in people to looking at what allowed some people to be more resilient and happy. He eventually called the field of study learned optimism. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I came across his work and started following him and learning about this, what was then, it was an emerging field of positive psychology. Mm-hmm. This was long before people heard about it as a field of study. And the things that I learned along the way were that just about anything that you want to get better at, if you can figure out a way to like do it, to practice it, you can build strength in that. So if you want to get stronger arm muscles, work out with weights on your biceps. If you want to be more optimistic or you want to be more grateful, well, practice telling positive stories about the future for optimism, or practice being thankful today for what you have, even if you're having a really bad, shitty day and you're angry with yourself. And I started doing that kind of stuff. And eventually I graduated university, I got married, we had kids, and I used some of these principles to raise my kids. Okay. So, and that was over a period of years.
That's amazing.
Okay. So that all happened. And then the really pivotal moment was that in 2004, so this is 21 years ago now, my second daughter, who was then 22, had a cerebral hemorrhage. And she was in her junior year at college and she died.
Oh my gosh.
And it was horrible. And we were really knocked for a loop. But I had this, in the middle of all that, I had this experience. When a young person dies, like people come out of the woodwork, people you never knew because they have their whole friends and, hundreds and hundreds of people came. And what was phenomenal was that everybody who came through the line said, oh, Kara was one of the most positive people I knew. And my wife and I kept looking at each other like, who is this child they're talking about? Because your children are always different in public than they are at home.
Yeah.
And while that was happening, of course, I'm watching her siblings who have friends showing up to pay condolences to them. And their friends are saying the same thing about them. It's like, oh, your family's always so positive and you're so positive. And, and then after we, buried her and kind of started moving forward, everybody around us was saying, oh gosh, it's going to take you years to get over this. And there's a huge hole here and everything else. And yes, there was, and there still is. And we bounced back really fast. And it was only when I look at this in your rearview mirror that I realized that my raising my kids with those practices, forcing them, they hated it, to go around the table at night and say, what's something that good happened to you today? It's like, roll their eyes. Well, it turns out this stuff works.
Yeah.
It was working on them.
Yeah.
And it was working on us. And so when tragedy hit, we bounced because we had very strong resilience muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And about a year later, when I felt like I was ready to kind of come back into the world and kind of re-engage with things again, I went on a retreat with a couple of coaches. Actually, I was on this retreat, and part of the work that we did as a group was looking at our vision and purpose and everything else. And one afternoon, we had this time to just go out and walk around this lake and contemplate things. And this came to me. I came back and I said, I know what I'm doing. I am completely rebranding my business. I am calling myself the Executive Happiness Coach. And I brought happiness and positive psychology into my work with leaders. And so it's all history from there.
That's amazing. And you really got a chance to see the positive impact that your children and your daughter made on the short time that she was here on earth, that the positive difference she made in those lives around her, which is so you got to see the fruits of yours and her labor right then and there.
Yeah. Right. That not only was she living in the world that way, she was also having this ripple effect on the people around her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what would you say? Oh, and I guess that kind of answered. So like what inspired? Okay. Now, how do you define happiness in the context of leadership? That was the other question.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Part 2 of the question. Right.
Yeah.
Well, so I'll be frank, Jacqueline, when I first did this rebranding, I came out of the corporate space, and then I started my consulting firm, and I was mostly working with people in human resources and in leadership domain. And when I changed my logo and I had these new business cards, and I'd go to hand them to people, or people say, what did you do? What would you do? And I would say, well, I'm the Executive Happiness Coach. Or, they'd look at my card and see that business name. I literally had experiences where I would see people just kind of like their faces would go blank, and I could see them just stiffen up and like kind of start to scan the room like I had just terrified them or something. And I had clients who I'd been working with for a while. Now I'd be doing a training program, and I would send my handouts ahead of time, and my logo was all over the handouts. And I'd show up for the activity, and I'd say, well, where's the handouts? Well, they're right there. Well, where's the cover page I sent you? Oh, well, we had to put a new cover page on it, because if our CEO saw that you're the Executive Happiness Coach, he wouldn't stay for the session. This happened to me multiple times, and I thought, oh, dear God, there are people who are so terrified of talking about emotions, or God forbid, happiness in the workplace, that they actually were uncomfortable talking to me. Well, 2 things that came out of that. Number 1, I realized the world needs this even more.
Yeah.
My God, if your CEO is uncomfortable allowing discussion of happiness or positivity or positive workplace culture, do you really want to be working there? Woo. And the other thing that happened was I realized I had a fabulous marketing tool. If people backed away from me, I'd be like, okay, well, you're clearly not my client.
Yeah, exactly.
If I have to convince you that
to be happy,
grateful or happy or positive is that, if I have to convince you that's a good thing, like, you got bigger problems.
Yeah. I know days when I've just felt like I was having this like hard battle internally, but then I would just write in my journal, just things that I'm thankful for. Yes. It would change my whole outlook, even regardless of how I was feeling. It was like, okay, let me write like 5 to 10 things that I'm thankful for, and that would just really change like your outlook on stuff and be like, okay, I can get through this day.
Right. Because the thing is, there is every day good in the world and there's bad in the world. Every day people are dying, and there's disease and measles outbreaks, and every day there are babies being born, and there's puppies, and flowers are blooming, and, bees are making honey. Good stuff is going on in the world. Your experience of the world depends entirely on which of those things you give more attention to.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to convince yourself that the world is a dark and dangerous place and you should never go outside.
Right. Yeah.
But why would you do that to yourself when you have a choice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and it's kind of like you reap what you sow, or it's like what you water manifests and grows.
Yeah.
So it's I know when sometimes I'll get negative like with myself, and I'm like Jacqueline, like, why are you speaking death over yourself? And a lot of times the way we speak to ourselves, it's like another guest in the show is like, if you spoke to somebody else like that, would you be able to have a relationship with them? And the answer is no, you couldn't.
Yeah. A friend of mine, he's a speaker, and he built
Okay.
a lot of his messaging around the golden rule. And the way he says it is this: he says, "You shouldn't follow the golden rule," and people in the audience go, "Oh, well, what does the golden rule say?" The golden rule says, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." And he said, but think about it. How many of you, when you're doing unto yourself, say things like, "You stupid idiot, what are you doing? You made that mistake again. You're just a jerk. You're worthless."
Yeah.
And you don't really want to treat other people like you treat yourself. You want the platinum rule. The platinum rule is do unto others as others want to be done unto. And it kind of puts you in a different conversation.
Yeah.
People want love and joy, and they want to be told that they have value and that they're appreciated. And I think that is also a great way to make yourself attractive to other people in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you put off positive vibes and are constantly talking about what you can do versus what you can't do, people want to hang out with you. They want to work for you and work with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I feel comfortable with someone, then I'm like just a total goofball, joke around, and then just really just try to make people laugh is like
Right.
one of the things I like to do. So like kind of going into that when you first made this transition, like with your company and so forth. Now, in your bio, you also described yourself as a troublemaker, which I can relate to because I love like creating ripples as well. So, like, in what ways have you challenged the status quo to make room for more joy and authenticity at work and other workplaces?
Well, mostly the word trouble. When I use the word troublemaker, I'm thinking of two things that I do and have done many times in organizations. One is that when I'm working with an organization, I will often come in, and as part of my process, I go around and I talk to a lot of employees. And I've learned through my training as a coach and a facilitator, I've learned how to create really safe spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to sit down with people and get them to open up to me, by making promises about confidentiality. And, I'm not going to take your exact words forward. I'm only looking for themes. And I find that people will talk to me when I give them the space to do that. And I learn sometimes ugly things about what's going on in the organization that people are afraid to talk about, because when they do, they get pushback or they get excuses.
Yeah.
So what I do is I pull that stuff together, and then I'm being paid to bring them a better understanding of what's going on in the company. So I sit down, and I think the language some people use is speaking truth to power.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned how to pull this all together and speak truth to power, and they don't like that. So of course, I also have to make it safe for leaders to be able to hear that the way they're being perceived is very different from the way they're showing up. And then the other thing that I do that I call myself a troublemaker is that when I'm having direct conversation, when I'm in a coaching conversation, and I'm picking up bullshit, I'm picking up that you're stuck in some story, like you because everybody's stuck in some story. Everybody's stuck in a story, right?
Yeah.
But when I'm picking up that they're stuck in a story that is actually contradicting what they want, especially, I will speak that aloud. Like, I get the sense that you believe this.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, yeah. Well, where did that come from? Is that true?
Yeah.
How is it working for you? Because many
Yeah.
times it's not, but they believe it is the truth. Like truth with a capital T.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it is one version of the world. What if there's another version of the world? And so a lot of the work that I do ends up making people very uncomfortable in the short term until they can kind of get past that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I think that's great, because a lot of us have like blind spots and our own reference points and so forth. So I feel like executive coaches can help work through the BS and help us really like see those blind spots that we have, that we obviously, if it's a blind spot, we have no idea that it's even there, but that's probably ways that like that others are receiving us or seeing us, and we have no idea that is the reference point that we're providing to the workplace, or to our family or to our friends or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or even to ourselves.
Very
Okay.
often, the person we lie to the most often is the one we see in the mirror.
Yeah, to ourselves. I was just thinking, yeah, we deceive ourselves probably the most.
Yep.
So okay, that's pretty awesome. So now you've like coached leaders in like 42 different countries. That's amazing. Wow. And you've traveled to all 42, or has some been
Oh
over like
gosh,
Zoom and stuff?
I wish I had traveled all 42.
Oh, that would be amazing.
I have traveled to quite a few countries.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, when you go to places like Europe, I live in the US, right? And the US is really big. You go over to Europe, if you drive like 30 miles in any direction, you're in another country. So
That's amazing.
you can go there and drive around, and you've hit like 15 countries in 12 days. So there were a couple of things that happened in my life that were just happy accidents. So my oldest child, when she went to university, she decided to do a year abroad, and she chose to study in Dublin, Ireland.
Oh, wow.
For a year at Trinity College, and so I went over to visit her at the end of her junior year before she came home. And she told the people at like the university center there about her dad. And I was a speaker, and I did leadership work and everything else. And so they put together this whole little like gathering of folks from around Dublin and asked me if I'd come in and do a talk while I was there. I'm like, oh, sure. Well, it was pure accident. It was doing a favor. And I ended up walking away with some leads on new clients who
Wow,
wanted to hire
what
me.
a blessing.
Then within about the same year, I got this random note it was an email address and an organization in Singapore, literally on the other side of the world.
Wow.
And I ignored it the first time because I figured it was spam.
Yeah, like that could
Right?
easily be a scam or something like that.
Easily. But they followed up and they said, no. We've seen some of your posts on happiness and leadership, and we'd like to invite you to speak at this conference at the Singapore Conference Center. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they sent me a ticket. And so I extended the stay, and I ended up spending a week over there and networked the hell out of my experience. Let me tell you. That ended up leading to me being hired by a leadership development firm over there as one of their external trainers. So now suddenly I'm working with clients in Europe, and I'm working with an organization in Singapore that covers all of Southeast Asia. And I would do these programs, and a lot of the people in the programs then would contact me directly to do one-on-one work with them.
Mm-hmm.
one thing led to another. And one day I realized I was doing more work outside the US than I was inside the US.
It happens like that.
Well, the other thing that happened is because of all that, I was a very, very early user of Skype.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right? A lot of people don't know that Skype was actually created in Europe. And it
Oh,
was
wow.
all over there long before it hit the US. So I was
Wow.
proficient in video calls. And then, of course, Skype, and then there was Zoom. And so I'm doing all this global work via video chat, and all of my competitors were still on ground. And then COVID hit.
Mm.
And suddenly, oh, if you're a consultant or you're a coach, it's Armageddon. It's the end of the world as we know it. And I'm like,
But you'd already set the
Fine.
framework for it.
It's fine. So I ended up training many of my colleagues in those professions. I did a lot of webinars on how to use Zoom. And in the meantime, all of my on-ground clients regionally said, well, I don't want to see you. I'm working from my dining room at home. So literally, even my local business went into the interwebs. And once you're all online, no one cares where you are.
Yeah, exactly. That was probably a big blessing of COVID. Was it allowed a lot of people? I mean, I'd already been working from home for sure. Yeah. But just really moving into that was great.
Yeah.
So from working with like companies and doing leadership like all throughout Asia and Europe and here locally in the United States, what do you think are some universal truths that you've discovered about like happiness regarding of the different cultures, regardless of the culture? I mean, sorry.
Yeah. Because there are some differences by culture. Some things that some of the ways people live in Southeast Asia, for example. Where we always have. There's multiple generations. Grown people are often living with their parents because you have a duty to your parents, right?
Right. Yeah.
Whereas in the United States, it's like, yeah, we put our parents in a box and ship them off to an old folks home kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there are big differences like that. The similarities, many of the similarities revolve around family.
Mm-hmm.
And balance. People are just as likely to be workaholics in Singapore or Malaysia or Thailand as they are in the US or Canada, or somewhere in Europe. And people universally yearn for personal time, for time with family, for time to relax and refuel.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the areas that I work with a lot of my clients around, is figuring out how to establish boundaries.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How do you set up boundaries? Boundaries, sometimes it's boundaries with work, with coworkers, at work. Sometimes it's boundaries between work and home. And sometimes it's about boundaries at home. Like, you're an adult. How do you say no to your mom? Or how do you say no to your needy sister? And so that again, it's universal. Everybody's got stuff they're trying to deal with.
Yeah. I find it's easier to work with, and I've been on for like the last year and a half of myself, like on this exploration of creating healthy time boundaries and creating healthy boundaries with all aspects of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And as I am, because I'll easily start flailing about and allowing myself to get pulled in a lot of different directions and not being focused on stuff that is going to grow my business. And so I'm still growing in that, but I find that it's easier to work with people that have healthy time boundaries And so that way, one, I think you know where they stand, and B, you can feel confident that they are going to dedicate a certain period of time towards whatever it is that you're hoping to achieve with them, whether it's like your family or, whatever it is. Like, hey, I have this amount of time to be able to provide. Let's go ahead and get this accomplished while, we're here,
Yeah.
And then just like, yeah, so that's probably like my biggest thing is just knowing that you can be able to count on someone instead of like if you're getting pulled in a lot of different directions and you have no internal ability to be able to control any of that or be able to create healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
So yeah, especially if like myself, I used to be like a people pleaser and I would want to like not say no to people and so forth. And now, I know that like no is a complete sentence with a period or exclamation mark at the end.
Yes.
And I don't feel bad about it either. I'm like, I just, I don't know. I'm not mean about it, or like if I'm having a rough day, I'm just like, I am not in the emotional space right now to be able to have this conversation. Like, we just need to like put this aside for another day, or I just, I need to just go.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, okay. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. And that's one of the things we've been focusing on is like just creating those healthy time boundaries. So I'm glad that that's great. And I think that makes us all happier too.
It does. And another speaking of happiness, in your intro and in your material, you talk about kindness.
Yes.
Kindness has a very, very strong correlation to our experience of happiness and living in the positive affect, the positive emotional family. When we reach out and perform an act of kindness for someone else, not only do they feel good and grateful, we end up getting that reflected back to us and we feel better about ourselves. So there's like a rebound effect from doing acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Knowing that we've had a positive effect on the world and are appreciated, and it gives us permission to feel good about ourselves.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that also adds additional happiness to our internal being, right? Because when we're feeling good about ourselves, then we're going to project that even more for others as well and ourselves.
Yeah. Even if, and by the way, even if happiness is not your thing, because happiness, as the executive happiness coach, sometimes it's hard for me to say this, that the word happiness, that one single emotion has in some parts of our world almost been weaponized. Like you should be happy, and if you're not, you've failed, and then people always want to attack happiness. If they're not happy, they want to talk about toxic happiness, and you're making it uncomfortable for us. I'm like, okay,
toxic positivity.
Let's not use that word. Let's remember that in that family of emotions, there's joy and gratitude and mercy and forgiveness and contentment and satisfaction and calm and optimism and zest and enthusiasm. I mean, like ambition. All of those are in that same bucket of emotions. So if happiness doesn't work as a word for you, pick the one or the ones that do.
Yeah.
And notice that if you work on any of them in that family, you'll get better at all of them.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. We're in the process of putting a workbook together right now for like children like 7 to 9. Ooh. And oh my gosh, what did I ask her? So my cousin, when I was in Florida last week, my cousin, her daughter is 7. So that's what it was. I had asked her to write something positive about herself, whether it was gratitude, being helpful. I just listed off these different things. And she said, I think my positive is helpful. I like to help. And I was like, okay. I said, now draw what you think that looks like. And so she drew a picture of herself helping her Nana put dishes in the dishwasher. And she said she thinks that's helpful. So I thought that was great. So that I think that links back to like the children. You're like, you're just putting all these positive things, and in them, and giving like when she's going through tough times, I'm like, are you amazing? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, say it. Like, I'm amazing. And just like all these affirmations, because in elementary school, she's going through like different things with other kids, and it's like, okay, how do we learn how to process through all this stuff, and how do we learn how to like heal from it and use it, and know as an adult, that, okay, these types of challenges that we go through as children, whatever they are, it's preparing us for life,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yes, it is. And the tool you're recommending there, or referencing, affirmations.
Yeah.
That's a tool that's been around for a long time,
Yeah.
long before positive psychology and neuroscience actually proved that when you are very consistent in offering yourself positive affirmations, that it actually has an impact in the brain. I mean, you become what you repeatedly do. I think everyone's familiar with that concept. And so if you work physical muscles, those physical muscles become stronger. If you work emotional muscles, if you work language muscles, the emotions you practice the most often become really strong. So if you practice anxiety, you become really good at being anxious. If you practice positive affirmations and positive stories and repeat them to yourself, eventually they become the first thing that comes up.
Yeah.
And it becomes much easier to believe because, that's what you've got stored inside of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I know we have to go soon, but I have 2 more questions. It's gone by just way too fast.
Okay.
So now you're like, I gotta stop saying like so much, but you're a big fan of dark beer, dark coffee, and dark chocolate, right?
Yes,
Like,
I am.
I just want to know what the story behind that, story behind that love, or is it just part of your like happiness ritual?
Well, dark chocolate, because it's one of the 5 basic food groups, and I like to
Yeah,
live a
it is.
healthy
I love dark chocolate.
lifestyle, right?
And it's actually the best chocolate for you.
It is. Oh,
Yeah.
going back to when I was a kid and I learned about theobromine and all the active, the flavonoids and the stuff that's going on with chocolate. It actually is good for you. It's a mood enhancer. Again,
Yeah.
The dark coffee is, I never drank. My dad drank gallons of coffee growing up. I always hated coffee. I never drank it at all. And in my late 30s, I ended up working in hospitality and got exposed to people who were making espressos. And like, there's a difference between espresso and a good coffee drink versus kind of the generic Mr. Coffee percolator coffee that
or Folgers or whatever it was. Yeah.
And I started drinking it without dousing it up with cream and sugar. And I'm like, oh, this is really good.
Oh, wow.
And then the beer thing just came out of again, I wasn't really a beer drinker, and then around the same time I discovered coffee, again working in hospitality, we would occasionally do these beer tastings, and I used to skip them because I was on the executive team, but I wasn't on the operating side. And they said, "No, come on along, Jim." And I remember I went into a beer tasting one time, and they had these corked bottles sitting on the counter.
Oh, wow.
With little dishes of chocolate. And I'm like, wait, chocolate goes with beer?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I remember I was so there, and I discovered that when you take away beers like Budweiser, and all these light beers that have no flavor, and you substitute Belgian ales and barley wines and things that just stand up and smack you in the face.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's what I've been doing ever since. I'm constantly trying to discover new craft beers. And whenever I travel, I try and drink local breweries.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay. All right. So my last question is, if you could leave your audience with one powerful question to ask themselves today to cultivate more happiness, what would it be?
That's a great question. About one question to cultivate happiness. I would come back to the basics. I would come up
Mhm.
back to like happiness 101, positive psychology 101. One of the most powerful, well-documented, proven exercises is a gratitude journal, something you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Not just doing it when you're having like, a depression emergency,
Yeah.
doing it regularly. It's something I've been doing on and off, quasi regularly for many many years, and I highly recommend it to people. And it's the act of sitting down and writing. You can write or type.
But writing is just so different.
It is so different. But even if you do digital, the fact just typing it in with your fingers, like making it real, not just thinking about it. It can't just be.
Yeah.
So putting it in print in some way, which slows you down, allows you to enjoy it. And what we know happens is when every day, you ask, what was I grateful for in the last day? Or what was I grateful for in the last 24 hours? What are the good
Mhm.
things? What happens over time is that your world view, your lens starts to shift. And so instead of like at the end of a day going, well, what was I grateful for? You start noticing while you're in the moment during the
Mhm.
day, you start thinking things like, oh, I'm going to write that in my gratitude journal tonight, which
Mm.
means you are noticing it right now as it's happening, and you're noticing it again when you write it down. So you have this opportunity to like quadruple your experience of the positive moments in your world
Mm.
just by asking that question every day, every day, every day.
What am I thankful for? Right?
What am I thankful for? What am I grateful for? Or what good things happened to me in the last 24 or 48 hours? Any variation of that will cause you to experience gratitude. Yeah.
I love that. We may have to create something like that. So
Sure.
with kind of
Go
stuff.
just research
Yeah.
blessing journal or gratitude journal. There's lots out there. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. So, okay. So, Jim, we unfortunately got you for such a short period of time today. I mean, it wasn't really that short, but it just went by so fast. So that's great. However, what is ways that people can get in contact with you? Who's your ideal client? I know these are a couple questions, so you can just let me know what ways that people get in contact with you, and then who's like your ideal customer. We'll also have that in the description as well.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can give you a quick line there. So I'm at theexecutivehappinesscoach.com. I am also the executive happiness coach in Instagram and LinkedIn. Facebook, I'm kind of drifting away from because there's so much negativity there anymore.
Yeah.
I don't like to spend time there. Um, and if you go to my website, one of the options on my homepage is you can become a member of my tribe, which means to subscribe to my newsletter, which comes out, it's not necessarily regular. It's like, monthly, something like that. Where I usually am writing about happiness, leadership, and coaching.
Okay.
Or just follow me in either of those two social media things, and you get 5 days a week. I'm putting something out with a real pithy thought about leading better, coaching better, experiencing more joy and happiness in your life. So just social media alone is great. And I am the executive happiness coach. So really my ideal clients are people who are in leadership roles, especially those who are wanting to make that a transition or have just
Mhm.
recently made a transition to another level and are realizing that they need to know and be able to do things that nobody's ever asked them to do before.
Okay.
Like they have to literally be a leader more than they are a finance person or an operations person
Yeah.
or a salesperson.
Yeah.
Suddenly, what people want from them is not, how do I do this, Jim? It's more like, hey, how do you, I need you to create a safe space so I can come and vent with you. I need you to get me the resources to do my job. I don't need you to do my job for me. I don't need you to tell me the answers, Jim. I need you to, like, hold me accountable. I need you to help me get clarity on my path and inspire me to do my job. And that's a different skill set. So I work with folks like that and help them really connect with how much impact they can really have simply by focusing on their presence and being a person who brings positive energy and curiosity and safety, psychological safety into spaces.
Okay. All right. Well, that's exciting, Jim. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. We'll let you know once it gets pushed out. I should be able to email you later when we're going to post it. And I really appreciate it. And then I hope you have a happy filled day.
I will. That's true, Jacqueline. And thanks for the conversation.
Thanks, Jim. All right. Bye-bye. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another You Are Loved podcast. For any of our journals or planners, feel free to look at our website, youareloved.store. Please also make sure that you check out Jim's website at theexecutivehappinesscoach.com. The link will be in the description. And have an amazing day, everyone.